Welcome to this explainer. You know, if you love peeling back the curtain on how things really work behind the scenes, you have landed in the absolute right spot. Today, we're digging into the fascinating and sometimes pretty chaotic ways American commanders-in-chief actually snagged the top job. Looking closely at the historical records of the 47 presidencies, it's just wild to uncover the patterns, the surprises, and the shifting dynamics of American leadership from the late 1700s all the way up today. So what does it actually take to become President of the United States? It's the ultimate question, right? When we're growing up, we kind of get fed this super straightforward, idealized version of how a person reaches the Oval Office. But man, when we actually analyze the source data covering all 47 presidencies, we see that the path is almost never a straight line. The resumes of these leaders are wildly different, shaped entirely by the specific eras they lived in and the unique crises they had to face. So here's the absolutely crucial takeaway. There is no single magic formula for absolute power. The historical data totally proves that to become the leader of the free world, you don't necessarily have to be a lifelong politician. By examining our source material, we can actually group these leaders by their unique archetypes, the distinct, sometimes surprising career paths that catapulted them into the nation's highest office. To make sense of this incredible history, we're going to break down these diverse career paths into 4 distinct categories. First, forged in the Revolution. Second, heroes of the battlefield. Third, thrust into the role. And finally, politicians and outsiders. Starting right at the beginning with category number 1, forged in the Revolution, the founders who literally built the nation. Back in the earliest days of the Republic, the ultimate resume builder definitely wasn't a modern political campaign. It was instrumental participation in birthing the nation itself. Take our very first president, born in Virginia in 1732, George Washington didn't just run a campaign for the job, he literally led the colonial army in the American Revolutionary War. That massive leadership on the battlefield translated directly into the nation's highest office in 1789, and importantly, before his death in 1799, his presidency set the absolute gold standard, the tradition of a peaceful transfer of power. That foundational path basically became the blueprint for his immediate successors. Think about it. John Adams secured vital foreign support for the new nation before serving as our first vice president. Then you have Thomas Jefferson, who leveraged the profound democratic vision he wrote into the Declaration of Independence to eventually reach the presidency, where he went on to double the country's size. And James Madison, the father of the Constitution, used his foundational role in writing the nation's laws to eventually lead the country through the War of 1812. For all of them, the path to power was deeply rooted in their literal creation of the nation. Moving right along to Section 2, Heroes of the Battlefield, from war to the White House. So as that initial revolutionary generation faded out, a totally new path emerged, military fame. And it is fascinating to see how battlefield success consistently captured the voting public's attention across completely different eras. This brilliantly illustrates the contrast between those eras. On one hand, we've got Andrew Jackson riding his famous victory at the Battle of New Orleans to become a populist leader in the 1800s. Fast forward all the way to the 20th century, and boom, Dwight D. Eisenhower uses that exact same playbook, ascending to the presidency as a deeply famous World War II general. Despite a massive gap in time, military heroism translating to executive leadership remained a remarkably consistent prerequisite. And we see this prerequisite of battlefield glory repeat time and time again. Whether it was William Henry Harrison and Zachary Taylor becoming massive national heroes on the frontier and in the Mexican-American War, or Ulysses S. Grant riding his monumental Civil War victories straight to the White House to fight the Ku Klux Klan. For a huge chunk of American history, military triumph was arguably the strongest currency you could have for executive leadership. Which brings us to Section 3, thrust into the role, the unexpected successors. Now, we shift to what is honestly the most dramatic and unpredictable path to the presidency, the accidental presidents. I want you to focus on this shockingly low number, 31. That is the mere 31 days William Henry Harrison served before tragically dying of illness while in office. 31 days. It's still the shortest term in history, but man, it instantly triggered an unprecedented constitutional crisis that totally reshaped how we view the path to the highest office. That exact crisis suddenly thrust his vice president, John Tyler, into absolute power. Tyler aggressively stepped up and assumed executive authority, and in doing so, he set the absolutely vital precedent for presidential succession. He basically proved that the path to the presidency doesn't always require a direct election. Sometimes the constitutional laws of succession dictate who holds the reins. And once Tyler set that precedent, this unexpected path bypassed the ballot box surprisingly often, usually through fate, tragedy, or major scandal. Just look at this lineup. Millard Fillmore inherited the Compromise of 1850 right after Zachary Taylor's death. Andrew Johnson was thrust headfirst into Reconstruction following Abraham Lincoln's assassination. Harry S. Truman suddenly had to make monumental, world-changing decisions at the end of World War II after FDR passed away. And Gerald Ford, he took over following the Watergate scandal that led to Richard Nixon's resignation. It just goes to show you the presidency can quite literally be inherited overnight. Finally, let's look at Section 4. Politicians and outsiders, organizers, firsts, and businessmen. As the nation modernized, the resume you actually needed began to splinter in some really fascinating ways. Suddenly, we see a massive diversity in the professional backgrounds claiming the presidency. Martin Van Buren was a deeply skilled insider who essentially built the modern Democratic Party. But contrast that with Herbert Hoover, who entered the office as a highly successful engineer facing the Great Depression. Then you have historical firsts, like Barack Obama focusing his administration on clean energy and healthcare reform, or strict business outsiders like Donald Trump running on America First policies and immigration control. The traditional path to power basically fractured, making plenty of room for entirely new archetypes. But here's the kicker. Whether they were deep Washington insiders or complete outside-the-beltway outsiders, what all these individuals shared was the ability to utilize highly organized political agendas to secure and wield their power. James K. Polk pushed a strict agenda of manifest destiny to expand U.S. territory. Theodore Roosevelt leveraged his immense energy to promote progressive reforms and protect our national parks. Joe Biden focused a highly specific agenda on economic recovery, infrastructure, and international alliances. The common thread here? Having a clear, organized focus is absolutely key to walking that modern path to power. Which leads us to our conclusion, redefining the presidential path. What exactly does the future hold? We've seen revolutionaries who literally built the nation from the ground up, generals who cashed in on battlefield glory, vice presidents thrust into the role overnight, and modern business outsiders bringing completely fresh resumes to the table. If there is one single takeaway you get from all this historical data, is that the only historical constant is change. Understanding these patterns proves that American leadership constantly adapts to the era it serves. The path to power shifts exactly as the nation's needs and its crises shift. So, I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over. What is the next path to power going to look like? As our world gets more digital, more globalized, and infinitely more complex, what completely new career path, maybe even one that literally doesn't exist yet, is going to forge the next leader of the free world? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and hey, keep asking those great questions.